freedom fighters, freedom lovers, free speakers, free thinkers, and anyone out there who's just looking for free stuff. Greetings and hello. It is I, your favorite undocumented conservative educator who's got all the credentials, degrees, certificates, continuing education courses, bells and whistles that the almighty state has determined is good enough to allow me to teach your children, Mr. Palumbo, and this is the Professor Liberty Podcast. That was kind of a long intro, wasn't it, folks? Hey, guys, it's been a while. Man, it has been, you know how it goes when you're a teacher. You know, you go from summertime, relaxing, and then you straight into school. And I have been swamped. And quite frankly, I haven't had time to ponder and research and put together quality podcast episodes for you. But for the tens and tens of you faithful followers out there waiting with bated breath, fear not, for today we have an episode. Now, today I'm going to break one of my unspoken rules. Anyone that has followed me for any length of time, I really try to stay out of the current political controversies, unless it's having to do with the state or the government or something like that. But normally the cultural stuff I try to stay away from. First and foremost, this is an educational podcast. I don't want to be a conservative firebrand. I don't want to be a commentator for the most part. I don't want to be a provocateur. And so I try to stay away from the current thing, the current controversy, the current whatever that has got everyone's feathers in a tussle, in a rustle, whatever that means. But what happened this week on September 10th with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, a political commentator? You guys, this one's different. This one hits different. I think this is going to have, politically speaking, some tectonic plate shifts that are going to be studied for years and decades to come. And you got to start to wonder, why is this one different? And as I was thinking about it over the past couple of days, it's really because Charlie was at the front and center of the free speech movement. And as anybody knows, for the past 20 years at least, here in the West, free speech has been under attack. Here in the West, we're not sure if we value free speech like our ancestors did. And so today, we are going to have an episode on just what is free speech. You know, I had to look back in the archive and, I did a couple First Amendment episodes, and I couldn't find any monologue on the freedom of speech. It's probably in there. Hey, guys, we're, here at Professor Liberty, we've got over 130 episodes. So the archive is getting quite extensive. So, but I couldn't find any free speech. We did freedom of the press. I remember that. And somebody's probably going to be like, it's number this right here, Mr. Palumbo. Mr. Palumbo, if you could just pay attention. Do you even care about your show, Mr. Palumbo? Anyway, so today we're going to talk about free speech, and I'm going to call this episode a tribute to Charlie and free speech. Now, the word tribute, it's like a remembrance, right? Tributes are reserved for ideas, for great things, people, movements, people that made a difference, people that shaped the world. And free speech is one of those ideas that absolutely changed the world. So where did free speech come from? Well, we're going to have to go back to the Enlightenment, the 18th century movement, philosophical movement. And we got to go back to one guy His name was Voltaire. Voltaire was a sharp-tongued French writer who criticized the overbearing Catholic Church at the time. Now, he famously said, "I disapprove of what you have to say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it." Now, some people say he didn't say that, and it's misattributed. But let me share that quote again. "I disapprove of what you have to say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it." It's kind of hard to find a better rallying cry, a better description of what free speech is. And this is clearly not what most of our young people and even old people, right? We're so politically divided here in the United States. We're so politically divided. We're so tribal, right? It's a cult. Yeah, it's a cult on both sides. Both sides have a cult. And they certainly do not want to hear what the other person has to say. You know, I have conservative, libertarian sentiments and leanings, right? Anybody that follows this podcast knows that. But I also have some liberal ideas, or I could be sympathetic to liberal things. And I tell you what, if I'm with my right-wing friends, you can trigger the right wing just like as you can trigger the left wing. It's a phenomenon on both sides. And we don't care about defending other people's right to say it. And here is where Charlie comes in. He made his whole career about going into the lion's den, these universities, and we'll talk about this a little later, these universities where these young minds are being indoctrinated, and he had conversations. And anyone that says Charlie was hateful or bigoted, just go watch the conversations. Just go watch them. They're all over the internet, especially now. But they're all over the place. And he just had conversations. And he even said, whoever disagrees, come up to the front of the line. This is the embodiment of free speech. Here's my idea. Here's my opinion. Here's my argument. What's yours? Now, back in Voltaire's day, and this is another reason why free speech is so important. Back in Voltaire's day, we still had monarchs ruling Europe with that ancient idea of the divine right of kings. What's the divine right of kings? Well, that was the theory that God gave the kings and the queens the right to rule, and anyone who disagreed, you were disagreeing with God. And so take it up with God. I am in charge. God gave me all the power. You need to just be quiet. And governments still sound like that today. People in power, and this is related to the freedom of press, which we are woefully disserviced in that realm as well. But the freedom of press, the freedom of speech, speak truth to power. I tell the kids in class, criticize every president, Republican, Democrat, every one of them, criticize them all. Hold their feet to the fire because power does not like to be criticized. And as soon as you stop criticizing, power grows, tyranny grows. All right, so let's fast forward, right? And we get to the mid to late 1700s and we get to the American colonies. Well, as British subjects, the early Americans, for the most part, technically enjoyed the rights of the English common law, right? Technically. But in practice, not the same. They lived under the iron grip of censorship. Before the 1700s, there was over 1,200 prosecutions in the colonies of seditious speech, a term that meant speaking critically of the government or its officials. And what was the punishment? You read scenes from a horror novel. One man in Virginia had his tongue pierced with an awl. Another Massachusetts man had his ears cut off. Public whippings, confinement in the stocks, all for criticizing those in power. And yet it was free speech that probably fanned the flames and moved public opinion towards revolution. The American Revolution wasn't just fought with muskets, but it was waged with pamphlets and debates and documents and articles. You guys might know Common Sense by Thomas Paine. These are all free people utilizing their opinions and reason and the powers of thought and conscience to move a nation and move a people. And it takes a lot of courage to do this, folks. It takes a lot of courage. You know, there's always going to be haters. If you go out there, we've talked about this on this podcast, but if you go out there and try to make change, affect change, right? You are going to have haters because they don't have the courage you do, and they hate you for it. And Charlie, he had buckets and buckets of courage to be able to go into these hostile environments and have civil conversations is just amazing. So after independence was achieved, the founding fathers faced the question, how do we protect the freedom of expression? On June 8, 1789, James Madison, the intellectual engine behind the Bill of Rights, proposed the first draft that would eventually become the Free Speech Clause in the First Amendment. He wrote, quote, "The people shall not be deprived or abridged of their right to speak, to write, or to publish their sentiments, and the freedom of the press, as the one great bulwark of liberty, shall be inviolable." You know, like violate, inviolable. Yeah, these are old words. You know, give me a break. Madison's close friend and fellow Virginian, Thomas Jefferson, went even further. Jefferson believed that the freedom of conscience, the right to think freely, was an inalienable right. In his words, quote, "God hath created the mind free," unquote. He argued that we can't surrender our thoughts to presidents or priests or kings or government officials, or maybe today, professors, teachers, social media influencers. Even if we tried, we can't do it because the reason, the act of thinking for oneself is baked into the human condition. For the framers and the founders, free speech wasn't just about words. It was about protecting the human mind from government control. George Washington once said, and this is a famous quote. Now, I kind of took this and modernized the language because sometimes old George, I love him, but sometimes his the way he wrote is very, not very smooth, I guess you could say. He said, quote, "If people aren't allowed to share their opinions on issues that could have serious and dangerous consequences, then reason is useless. If we lose the freedom to speak freely, we would be silently led to our deaths, like sheep to the slaughter." Ben Franklin said, "Freedom of speech is the principal pillar of a free government. When this support is taken away, the constitution of a free society is dissolved and tyranny is erected in its ruins," unquote. As you can see, to our founders, freedom of speech was not a luxury. It was a structural pillar of liberty. They learned this from men like John Locke, who wrote about the right to speak freely without fear. They witnessed the censorship of dissenters, like the trial of John Peter Zenger in 1735. He was a printer who dared to criticize the governor of New York, and he helped set the stage for the First Amendment. Without the right to criticize authority, liberty dies. Modern theorists also agree. Democracy does not work without free speech. We can't govern ourselves if we can't talk about problems. Debate is the engine of self-governance. "Oh no, just listen to the experts, Mr. Palumbo. You need to just listen to the people in authority, Mr. Palumbo. They know what they're doing." How do we test ideas? How do we expose corruption? How do we pursue the truth if we're not allowed to question things? We certainly can't have a free society if we're worried about hurting other people's feelings. The freedom of speech serves as a checking value, a way of the public to hold the government accountable. And how is that going today? Well, let's check in on the UK. A few years back, they passed something called the Online Safety Act. This law aims to protect children and remove harmful content, but many say it's gone too far. Many Britons who are posting their ideas of illegal immigration, or maybe anti-Muslim sentiment, or even if you say, I like bacon, because that's offensive to Muslims, who are a minority in the country, maybe not for long, you can go to jail. If you post something in Great Britain, you can get a knock at the door from the police. Boy, they don't have anything else better to do. And here's the thing, folks. Without free speech, the government becomes the arbiter of what you're allowed to say and what you're not allowed to say. And when the government becomes the arbiter, there's going to be a protected side and a non-protected side. And we have that in the United States. We absolutely have that in the United States. As a white man, I can't say certain things. I will get in trouble. But if you're black, you can say many things, and you won't get in trouble. That, my friends, is a double standard. And that, my friends, is not free speech. And when you have the courage, the resolve to go into these spaces and say things you're not allowed to say and push back on narratives that you're not supposed to push back on, like Charlie Kirk did, you are going to incur the wrath, the hatred of those people who are used to having their views and their ideas cradled and coddled and scaffolded. Sorry, that was a education buzzword. And let's talk about the campuses for 1 minute. Let's talk about these campuses. Did you guys know the word university comes from the Latin? And it means many becoming one. A university is a place where diverse ideas clash and create an environment where young people go and figure out what is the truth. But today, many campuses, particularly in the West, are ideological boot camps where dissent is punished and only certain viewpoints are tolerated. And the result is a generation of people who are less comfortable with talking about things they disagree with. You disagree with me. You're a fascist. You don't affirm my delusion. You're a racist. But as I just said, colleges are supposed to be a place where you experience uncomfortable truths. You know, when you're learning things, when you're growing, I've changed my mind countless times. My political views are not the same that they were 20 years ago, 10 years ago. But then you have to be humble and say, you know what? I was wrong on that. That's scary. People don't like that. But to have free speech is where you grow. You get exposed to different ideas and you grow intellectually, emotionally, morally. In other words, you're supposed to go to college to learn how to think, not be told what to think. And I'd like to talk to the parents real quick, okay? Because I know there's stuff coming out about the assassin, and he looks like he grew up in, you know, a middle-class, conservative family, and then how could he do this? And this is all speculation, but you guys, if you have children, you can't be an autopilot parent. Oh, I feed them, I put clothes on their back, and the school will teach him what he needs to know, and the church will teach him what he needs to know, and, you know, here's a screen, I don't know what you're watching. You cannot be a autopilot parent. You have to raise your kids, okay? What are you guys learning in school? Oh, what do you think about that? Do you think that's true? Do you guys ever ask that? Ask that to your kids next time you're at the dinner table. And they say, oh, we're learning about the American Revolution and blah, 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 blah. Oh, what do you think about that? Well, I don't know. The teacher said this and this and this. Well, what do you think? Right? My kids always want to know what I think. And before I tell them, well, what do you think? How do you know that's true? And they'll say, well, because of this and this and this. And then I play a game. I'll play a game with them. Okay, well, what if I said this and that? And I push back and I force them to digest what they're thinking. The crazy thing, if you watch these Charlie Kirk videos, is the person that comes up to the mic, he or she is so confident. And they come out and they say, you're a Nazi and you believe in this. And then he goes, show me where I've said that. And then they crumble like a deck of cards, like a house of cards. They crumble the very first question. And we've talked about this on the podcast. If you can't have a conversation, an argument, right? If you can't propose an argument past the first question, you have no idea what you think. You don't think anything. We have so many young people that are influenced by media. They literally, most of my kids at school, they don't like Trump. They hate Trump. Trump's a racist, right? If you ask them, why do you hate Trump? Because I do. That's not a reason. It's not a reason. You gotta have a reason. We were just doing something in class last week, and I said, okay, this question right here is an opinion question, which means you can't really get it wrong. However, I want you to tell me the reason why you think that. So if you do not have that part in the answer, I'm going to take points off. I want to know why you think that. Give me evidence. And now, with Charlie's death, there's so many people coming out. Obviously, there's the demons and the ghouls and the just evil people that are celebrating this. I mean, that's just so despicable. But there's a lot of young people that are saying, I was once this way. I once had these beliefs, but I listened to Charlie and I changed my mind. And I think that's great. And that is what freedom of speech is for. That is what it's for. We are free people, so we can have free exchange of ideas. And I tell my class, look, if someone says despicable, hateful things, right? Because they're always worried about, well, if we have free speech, what if someone's going around talking about the N-word or going around talking about, I want to kill all black people? Or what if they just have some disgusting viewpoints, right? And I said, the free exchange of ideas in a marketplace of ideas, those extreme ideas are going to be put on the shelf. They're going to be ostracized, okay? They're not going to grow. But you know how they grow? You want to know how you can radicalize somebody? Censor them. Censor them. Then you give them legitimacy. Oh, why are these people being censored? Maybe I should go take a look. And this is why there's all these extreme views on the internet, because we ignore them. Just let them speak. Let them speak, right? Go back to this quote that we talked about. I don't agree with what you're saying, but I will defend your right to say it. And then we let the free market of ideas work itself out, and those superior ideas will rise to the top, and the inferior, hateful rhetoric will fall to the wayside. Here at Professor Liberty, we seek to educate, inspire, and restore. If you like this podcast, please go to Apple Podcasts and give me a 5-star rating. You can do me even better with the algorithm and give me a written review. Check out the website, ProfessorLiberty.com. I've been posting stuff on the Proclaiming Liberty blog lately. I think you guys will like. Check us out on Facebook. Check us out on X. If you need lessons, activities, worksheets for your homeschool or classroom needs, go to teacherspayteachers.com and check me out, and you can help support financially the work of Professor Liberty. Until next time, go throughout the land and proclaim liberty.